Hello, friends, and welcome to a very special late night edition of the Kings of Anglia podcast. It's deadline day. It's coming up to 20 past 11. The whole Heath household is asleep. The whole Warren household is asleep. But luckily, friends, two of us are still awake. I'm your host, Mark Heath, and with me, Andy Warren from his dimly lit spare room / office. Andy, it's been a tremendous day. It's been an exciting day. It's been a very busy day. How has it been for you?
It's been a long day. I don't know. I never know what to do with the lighting when we do this at night in here, because the main light is directly above my head, which makes me look ridiculous. My lamp is also appalling. So, yeah, we'll go with the ghost story, kind of dimly lit face. But yeah, what a day! What a 3 months it's been. It's at points it felt like the end of this transfer window was never ever going to come, but it has, and it's come with a pretty spectacular ending, all things considered.
Yeah, in terms of the nature of the window, it couldn't really finish in more suitable style, could it? With the signings they've made today, which obviously we'll come on to in a minute. You may notice that we may be speaking in hushed tones. Obviously, as I say, this is a late night edition of the podcast, and Andy's young family are sleeping nearby. My wife, the boss, is in bed not too far away upstairs. And I'm trying not to get too excited because I've been given my orders not to wake her or the dog up. And you may see, if you're watching on video, I've had to relocate into the main office of Heath Towers, which is where the boss normally runs her business from. I've been sent downstairs so I can't be too noisy.
It suits you. You're in palatial surroundings. Now the real worker in the house has gone to bed. You're allowed in the big boys' room.
Exactly that. And as I say, it is a late night edition. So at some point, Andy is going to take his top off. I probably am going to swear. I've already got Andy a little whiskey on the go to mark the end of transfer deadline day, which is always a little tradition I have for myself. But let's waste no further time, Andy. I want you to answer one question before we get properly into this. Are you, Andy Warren, excited?
No. The amount of times you've told me that I don't get excited, I believe it now. Yeah, I'm relatively excited. Let's go that far.
Come on, your balls are tingling a little bit, aren't they?
I'm aroused.
Yeah, and it's not just the manscaping you've been doing. It's been one hell of a window. Let's talk about today then, Hutchie, and then we'll talk about the whole thing. Ipswich Town went out in a blaze of glory. Signings 18 and 19 made today. Bursant Celina we knew was happening yesterday. Christian Walton obviously arrived yesterday, the keeper. Bursant was unveiled at 8 a.m. this morning. We were sat doing a video. I hadn't even had a shower this morning, Hutchie, a little peek behind the curtains when we did that video with Celina signing. And then at 9:30, Sam Morsy, the cherry on the cake, was also announced. So your thoughts first on those two signings and how important they are in the grand scheme of this giant rebuild at Ipswich Town.
I think we got excited about a few of these signings. Some of them have shown it on the pitch, but I think you could very definitely argue that these are kind of a best till last scenario in so many ways. We'll talk about them both, I'm sure. This light is awful. It's not doing much for my image. But yeah, I think I probably would argue that it's kind of a best till last scenario. Celina was always clearly the attacking options they brought in this summer are ridiculous in many ways, but Celina was always seen as the cherry on top of those. They've got him after months of trying to get him. We've seen that they need a midfielder like Sam Morsy. And clearly he's a player that Paul Cook has loved for a very long time. And to say that they've been trying to get him for months would be inaccurate, but he's clearly someone that Paul Cook would have wanted. I think he would take him to any club that he managed, and he's been someone they've monitored for months, not believing that they could necessarily get him, but the stars have aligned, and when they did, they've gone all out to do it. They've gone big on this this last one with Morsy, and yeah, I would argue that it's saving the best till last.
How have they managed this, Andy? Because Celina, we've talked about before, is not really a League One player. He's never a League One player. And Sam Morsy has been playing in the Championship for Middlesbrough. He's a player that has been playing at a higher level, Egyptian international, and he, like many others, has decided to take a step down into League One and come to Ipswich Town. What is Mark Ashton giving to these people to get them to step down? Because he's got some kind of a magic selling going on, hasn't he?
Yep, he's a good salesman, but look, we can't ignore the fact that he's given them a lot of money. Like,
well, that helps.
These people are being incredibly well paid. Sam Morsy still had 2 years left on a Championship contract, a significant 5-figure a week sum, I would imagine, his Middlesbrough contract. Not sure if they'll have quite reached that figure here at Ipswich, but they're going to have got close to convince him. He signed a 3-year contract here, so essentially they've given him a 1-year extension, but they'll have offered him a really good financial package. Same with Celina. Same with lots of these players. But what I think they've also been able to give them is sort of a glimpse of a plan. They've been able to present, with Mark Ashton has been able to present himself as being a man with a hand kind of firmly on a tiller, firmly in control of a plan, and there's a clear vision coming from the ownership. So I think you can't ignore the finance, but there are other kind of strings to the Ashton bow here that he's been able to show these players, and I think it's kind of snowballed a lot. I remember months ago now we were sitting here kind of for a couple of weeks talking about Sonny Bradley, weren't we, at Luton, about how if they could get that deal done, which they didn't at the time, things could snowball. And if I'm honest, kind of I was sitting here this evening, kind of after the Morsy deal had just been announced, and thinking, you know what, if they were trying to get Sonny Bradley today, they'd probably get him. Yeah. There's probably enough now to kind of to get that deal done. He obviously signed a new contract at Luton. Ipswich then went elsewhere with Burgess and Edmondson. So two signings there that there's a lot to like about. But I think they could have done that Sonny Bradley deal today if it had been now that they'd gone for it, because things have snowballed. I think players will look at a squad being completely rebuilt almost from scratch and think, I fancy a bit of that. Every time a new piece gets added, I fancy a little bit of that. And then ultimately they've managed to do these two today. So the ambition's there, the finances there, and the suits, if you want, are there to sell it. And it's all seemingly come together. They just got to do it on the pitch now.
Indeed, and that's something we'll come on to in due course. I also want to talk about who's going to play, because that's going to be a big issue, because they can't all play, all these incredible signings. A lot of them, or some of them at least, can't even sit on the bench. So we'll talk about that in due course. But let's rewind, Andy, Hutchie, my old friend, to the start of things, where Cook first used the term demolition man, and we got, again, quite aroused by that and all excited about what was to come. And there were kind of little bits we were hearing and this, that, and the other. Did you expect, though, back then, even with words like that and the things we were being told, that this is what we were going to get? How would you contextualize this window in terms of your career covering transfer windows in football?
Well, it's by far the most mad transfer window I've ever covered. Going back to April, when kind of the demolition man moniker was thrust at us by Paul Cook. That day, I was doing the press conference that day down Zoom, just as I am now, staring down my little laptop, and honestly, the look in Paul Cook's eye when he was saying those things was so intense. Like I've never really experienced a kind of press conference like that before, in terms of the intensity. He'd been angered. I think it was I can't remember if it was the Wimbledon loss or the Northampton loss, but it was one of those appalling 3-0 Tuesday night away losses, and it was before the Saturday game, and he was furious. I think he'd only seen the players for the first time since that game that morning, and he was furious. He'd come in, and he was a man that had come in to speak his mind, and he did exactly that. But I think I'd be lying if I then assumed that, yep, that means that 20 odd players are all going to be moved on. But by the time it got round to the day after the Fleetwood game on the final day of the season, you start hearing a bit more that actually, yeah, loads of these players are going to be released today. And they were. Then a couple of days after that, Stu and I had worked quite hard to put a story together about just how great that was going to be. And I'll be honest, it's worked out pretty much exactly as we were told by various people that it was going to go. Everybody told they could go, barring a handful. Largely, they've all kind of come to pass. That's how it's happened. But even back then, I felt we were extremely confident in the sourcing of that story. But again, we talked about it. We sat out to paint a picture. We were sat outside Nando's.
Nice.
When we were only allowed to be outside at this point in May, and talking about it. And we talked about there's going to be a way back for him. There's a way back for him. They might be able to use him a little bit. But no, it's actually turned out exactly as we were told. It's just we had no idea who the replacements were going to be at that point.
Yeah, it's been absolutely staggering, hasn't it? I mean, you can't really think of enough kind of hyperbolic words to describe it. It's one of those rare things where words are not really enough. I just want to read out the ins before we talk about them, because I think it's worth recapping. So 19 players in: Wes Burns, Lee Evans, Rakeem Harper, Macaulay Bonne, Vaclav Hladky, Matt Penny, Joe Pigott, Scott Fraser, George Edmondson, Connor Chaplin, Louis Barry, Sonny Aluko, Kyle Edwards, Hayden Coulson, Cameron Burgess, Tom Carroll, Christian Walton, Bersant Celina, and Sam Morsy. When you kind of read them all out, it's kind of, well, unbelievable, really, isn't it? It's a ridiculous transfer window that's happened, Andy. What we've talked about this before. Of those 19 signings, I've asked you before about who you think was the best signing of the summer, and you've hinted there at the start of the show that you think the best may actually have been last. So now that the window is slammed shut, as it always does, it never closes quietly and apologetically, it always slams. What do you think now is the best signing of the window, or the best 2 or 3 signings? What stands out for you?
Look, it's transfer deadline day. They've just signed Bersant Celina and Sam Morsy, and that as a duo, you've got a cherry on top of the attacking cake there, and you've got what feels like a missing piece for midfield. We've not seen some of these signings yet. We've still not seen George Edmondson. Obviously, they've signed a new goalkeeper. It's impossible to say who the best is. Some of those signings have done better than I thought they would do short term. Some of them haven't. But the two today are fantastic, and even alongside them, someone like Kyle Edwards to have as a permanent Ipswich Town player on a long term contract. That signing is the kind of, like, Celina is one of these previous Mick McCarthy loan players that was a bit of stardust sprinkled on a workman-like team and was immediately unattainable. Like, they came in on loan and you're like, yep, they're going to be here for a year. That's it. And then Edwards not having the pedigree perhaps of those guys, but clearly has the ability. So yeah, if you really pushed me for a best signing, I'd say him. But the two that have come in today, you can't argue against them either.
I just wonder if maybe a year down the line, when Ipswich Town have stormed to promotion glory and we're in the Championship and plotting, talking about how to get back into the Premier League. I wonder if we'll look back on this day and say that Sam Morsy was the key to unlocking everything. Quite often in these massive team rebuilds, turnarounds, there's a player who maybe is not the flashy superstar, if you like, but is the glue that holds a team together, the straw that stirs the drink, to use a baseball phrase. And you just wonder if Sam Morsy, given everything we've seen so far this season and his history with Cook, could be that kind of catalyst that fires Town forward from this point onwards.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what Matt Holland was for years at Ipswich. I'd describe him as a straw that would stir the drink. He had people like Kieran Dyer, David Johnson, Marcus Stewart, Jim Magilton, Martin Reusser, all around him. But he just stayed there stirring the drink. Was never flashy. Did things that other players wouldn't necessarily want to do, and did them without making a big deal about it. It's the same with any walk of life, isn't it? Everyone needs those. Every business, every workforce needs those kind of people. Yeah, you could well. We've certainly seen that he's a missing piece. We've seen it in the game so far. So he comes in and solves touch wood, comes in and solves a problem. And that problem has currently got Ipswich in the relegation zone. So if by solving that problem they suddenly start leaping forward, then yeah, you could well be right.
Okay, so that's one problem. Let's talk about the wider problem now, which is a good problem to have, Andy, but they've signed 19 players. They've got an unbelievable, particularly in terms of attacking options, an unbelievable array of attacking options. And it's just not going to be possible for all these players, not only to play, to start, but even to sit on the bench. So that clearly is going to be a man management thing for Cook to tackle going forward. Who would you, though, of all the options, who do you see being the kind of the key starting 11 going forward? I mean, you'd imagine Walton has come in to take Hagley's place in goal, wouldn't you? That's the only way that really makes sense. And he sits on the bench for a while and thinks about his start to life and tries to get back into the side. Where else do you see players playing in this now fully finished Ipswich Town squad?
Yeah, I think he'll ultimately be in goal. There's a pretty much 2 week run up now to their next game as well, so they have got some time to work on this. I think it's pretty clear. A back four of Vincent Young, Edmondson, Burgess, and Coulson will emerge at some point. You'd think. That's maybe harsh on Luke Wolfenden. Don't forget there's Toto and Ciala in there. But I think logic says that will emerge as the back four. Morsy Morsy's probably going to be the full-time club captain. I would be staggered if that didn't happen from this point. There's a reason Cook didn't give that to Lee Evans. I'm not entirely sure who will partner him. I think you could make a case for either of those two, Evans and Raheem Harper, to drop out and be replaced. My gut feeling at this point is that potentially for the next game, which will be at home to Bolton, Morsy and Evans might be the two. I don't know, but I think that could be a bit more fluid, that position next to Morsy. I think Macaulay Bonne, all the signs are that he should be the one up top. And then that's where you've got the real problems behind that. Celina and Edwards, can you play them both in the same team? It'd be exciting, definitely. But players like that aren't on it in every single game. So you'd think that they're going to be playing there. I've got this feeling, I don't know, but I've got a feeling that Celina may play centrally. Because Edwards clearly is a left-sided player. Celina's played centrally a lot. I'm sure he could play on the right, but both Celina and Edwards are right-footed, looking to cut in from the left. And then, say you do that, you've got, for the right side, you've got Wes Burns, Louis Barry, who can play there. He's a central player as well. Chaplin can play central and wide. Aluko.
Where's Scott Fraser
There's-
going?
Scott Fraser. It's crazy. It is crazy, isn't it? So good problems to have, but it's it's going to be interesting to see which way that shakes out. But you can never have too many attacking options, really.
No, and there is an absolutely bristling arsenal that Paul Cook now has at his disposal. We obviously James Norwood, Joe Pigott there as well. We've not discussed. Pigott seems to have lost his starting spot for the time being. But in terms of the rest of League One, looking at this squad, Andy, what would you think they'll be making of it? Because it on paper it's a remarkable squad, isn't it? And we've been here before, and I know I'm guilty of hyperbole and going over the top a bit. And I wrote something before last season saying that Town squad is not only good, it could be great. But you compare that squad to this squad, and there's no real comparison, is there? On paper, at least.
It's different, isn't it? The way that other squad, the previous squads were built, was some young players like Downs and Dazelle in there. Then there's kind of the Hurst mob of Jackson, Edwards, Enciala, Nolan, who were all stepping up to play in the Championship and got bruised by that. Lots of these players are stepping down to play in League One. So I think in terms of mentality and pedigree, it's a different kettle of fish. There are some. I think some players have left the club that could very easily have been involved in this squad. Starting, not so sure, but some have left that could very easily be involved in it. But in terms of pedigree in League One, this squad is mismatched to almost every other club in the league. League One is a league of mismatches. It's kind of got a heavy ex-Championship presence now that seems to get heavier every year, and some spending in there. And then you got other teams like Accrington and Wimbledon, Cheltenham who have just lost their kind of long throw expert to non-league football in Ben Tozer. He's gone to Wrexham. So it's a league of mismatches, and there's going to be no sympathy for Ipswich from here. I think everyone's going to look at them and think this team should be right in that mix for automatic promotion, kind of minimum target. So we talked for so many years about Ipswich having a target on their backs in this division, but that target is even greater now, I would say.
And what does this mean for Paul Cook? Because he has been backed unbelievably. There's probably not another manager in football, English football at least, that's been backed to the extent that he has been by the owners and Ashton, and he has completely overhauled the squad. The squad is now 100% undeniably his. He clearly didn't fancy the players he had last season. They're all gone, and he's got this new exciting squad, but now he's got to make it work. And we've got to see, I mean, realistically, we've got to start to see results pretty quickly, haven't we? I mean, they've not won in 5 games. They've got a week off this weekend, so in theory they could fall further behind the pack. And pretty soon with a squad like this, you've got to start stringing some wins together.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't argue that the owners and the investors have done their job. Mark Ashton has done his job. He's delivered this squad of players. Look, some of those players will undoubtedly be players that Paul Cook would kind of have severely pushed to get. Some will have been players that Ashton brought to the table. It's been stressed that Cook has final say on all incomings. He's got his captain from Chesterfield and Wigan. It's over to him. It is over to him. It's over to him, and it's over to the players to deliver now. I think those off the pitch have done their side of things. I don't think you could realistically argue that there's a hole in that squad now. I think they flirted with the idea of bringing in another right back on top of what they've already got, but I don't think they necessarily needed that. I think with Vincent Young, Dinassian, and even Wes Burns, I don't think that was necessary. The big gap was that sort of ball winner, combative midfielder. They filled the gap, and they filled it with a man who could not trust more than the man that they got in Morsy. So it's over. It is over to Paul Cook now. It's time to deliver. It's time to hit the ground running now. Coming out of this break, the gelling has to happen. The results have to happen, and they've given themselves a bit of work to do to get firmly back into the mix. I'm not going to call it a promotion chase yet because the table's not formed fully, really, but they've given themselves some work to do, and it's time to start doing that work now.
Yeah, and in terms of the way it's fallen, kind of adding to their squad, finishing the transfer window, and now having 2 weeks, the best part of 2 weeks, to train together before they next play, and then it's another home game against Bolton. You couldn't really ask for more than that, could you? In terms of being perfectly set up to on you go. Now you get the first win, and you start to really pick up. There can't really be many more excuses now, can there?
No, I think you're right. I think it's the perfect scenario now. We know that we were even talking about this back in March and April, weren't we? About Cook not having time on the training pitch with his players, and you know, to be fair, when he did get time with them back in March and April, it actually got worse because I think he realised just how far away from the fitness expectations that he had.
Yeah,
that squad at that time were, and I think that week is actually probably when a lot of his decisions got made in many ways. But he's got it now. We keep being told that the injuries that are keeping people like Chaplin, Edmondson, etc. out are not major ones, need days rather than weeks to clear up. Well, they're going to have that now. It's the perfect setup going into almost kind of hit the reset button and start the season again, albeit with a little bit of a handicap.
Yeah, but nothing that's insurmountable just yet.
Absolutely not. No, definitely not.
If you can string 15 or 20 wins together in a row, which is perfectly understood.
Well, that's what Bolton did. Bolton,
there you go.
And they're the opponents next up. Bolton did that towards the end of the season. It can be done. I don't think it's going to be done by this Ipswich team. That's a ridiculous expectation, really. But they've got to start stringing them in and reeling some of these teams in and get themselves back to where they should be in the table.
Mate, if any team is going to reel together 20 wins in a row, looking at the Town squad on paper in this league, it's surely going to be Ipswich Town. You expect it to be. Just before we move on to other things on deadline day, Hutchie, were there, I assume, and you're a man that's very involved in deadline day. In my experience, football reporters either hate or love deadline day, and I think is it fair to say that you're more in the love camp? You kind of
more than that, yeah. I'm further towards the love than the hate, definitely.
Yeah,
I feel a bit mellow about it this year. Maybe it's just the months of deadline days, which it feels like have led up to this particular one. But in general, yeah, I like them. They're fun.
They're your time to shine, and you shone today. Your partner in crime, Stewie Watson, has taken the week off. But to be fair to Stewie, he's been filing stories from home. He's been nailing the transfer exclusives. He's got the Morsy one earlier today, which is fantastic. Just looking around the rest of League One, Andy, has there been any other kind of signings that have caught your eye? I know that Berahino has signed for Sheffield Wednesday, which is for me is another extraordinary signing for League One. I know he's had a kind of a down period in his career, but that guy, if he can get it together under Darren Moore, who he played for at West Brom, that he could completely rip League One apart.
That's going to go one way or the other, isn't
it?
There's some interesting like later ones that have happened today. Will Griggs gone to Rotherham, bang on the deadline. Maybe he'll be on fire at some point. But Sunderland to Rotherham, that's a big loan between two challengers, you'd think. Our old friend Curtis Tilt has gone back to Wigan. Wigan have signed two centre backs today. Curtis Tilt being one of them. I'll be honest, none catch my eye like the Ipswich ones that have happened today. Just scrolling down the list now of deals that have been done today to check whether I've missed any. I'll tell you one that I did like actually is Peter Chioso, who we know from Northampton. He was on loan at Northampton last season from Luton. He's gone to MK Dons today for kind of a flying right back. He played really well against Ipswich last season in both games, and I think he'll be a good signing for MK Dons. Not strictly a League One, but I was interested to see that Teo Eden has moved from Lincoln to Blackburn in the Championship on a permanent deal.
Okay.
Someone that we obviously know a little bit about from here, but yeah, there's some there's some good sides in League One. It's not going to be easy for Ipswich from here, but every way you look at it and you look at these lists, like they've signed Bersant Celina today.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. Yeah. I just picture like other League One managers and chairman kind of sitting in the boardroom drinking the tea, and then what? Yeah. So who?
Mr. Chairman, can we have Bersant Celina? Yeah. No, you can't.
For first, yeah, exactly. Let's move on, Hutchie, to other news that's happened today. Armando Drobra, as expected, has completed his season-long loan move to Collieu down the road, completing a bit more of a reunion down the A12 as well. This is a good one for him, isn't it? I know, he's certainly capable of playing at League One level, but for me, this ticks quite a lot of boxes for him in terms of development as a player, going somewhere with players he knows and a team he'll get a chance to play for.
Yeah, no, I think it does. There was a lot of interest in him. And I think a lot of that interest came from clubs that were a little surprised, that he was available. But then when you see that Ipswich have signed Bersant Celina today, you kind of maybe are not surprised. Even before that deal went through, I thought it was the right thing for him to go out on loan. I do get the argument that maybe he should stay and he's good enough to be part of this squad. I think he is good enough to be part of this squad. I think Paul Cook thinks he's good enough to be part of this squad. But Armando Dobra's role in this squad here at Ipswich would be to play in the EFL Trophy, to be on the bench sometimes in the league, and play 7-8 games maybe. Certainly not full games. The road to starting a league game would be difficult, and that's no slight on his ability. It's just in terms of where he's at compared to where someone like Celina or Edwards, who's 3 years older than him, Wes Burns, who's 6 years older than him. Dobra hasn't got those miles on the clock. He's played, he's in his third season now, and yeah, he's been around the first team for 3 seasons here at Ipswich, but he's never truly nailed down a starting spot, not even close to that really, nailed down a starting spot, and maybe he should have done at times. There were times where Paul Lambert could have used him more. He impressed in pre-season, but for me, going away and playing from this point of the season on, he could play 35, 40 matches from this point on. By the sounds of things, he's going to be playing wide left. That's where Colchester see him, coming in on his right foot. He scored goals for the first team that way in the past. I think it's great. I think it's great for him. I've seen people suggesting that, why is he kind of linking up with a team of Ipswich cast-offs? So being around those people isn't going to help him. But I think the opposite. From what I gather, Cole Scoos has been really heavily trying to recruit Dobra for this loan move in the last few days. And I think what you said is right. Kind of slipping into an environment where he can click immediately. You would think is perfect, because the thing that happens with these kids is they go out on loan, and we've seen it before, haven't we, with Nydam and Darber at other clubs, and if you don't kind of get playing straight away and you're not involved, these loans just turn into absolute nonsense for you, and you're not involved. You're sat on somebody else's bench miles from home. But if you can come straight into a starting lineup, which is likely what will happen with Dobra, you could get 35, 40 games at a good club, a club that is hoping to be challenging for a playoff place this season, and hopefully follow the Luke Wolfenden Flynn Downs path rather than the Tristan Nydam one.
I think it's a great move for him. I think we forget he's still a young lad. He's just down the road, so he can carry on living where he is at the moment. He's got players that he knows will take him under his wing, and he can be a star for Collier at that level. Could be the making of him. I think it's a really good move for him. Someone else was on the move today, and briefly, Andy, was actually the most read story on our website for an hour or so. Best known as the voice of the strike, sadly. I'm not sure what it says about his football career to date, but young Barry Cotter, formerly of this parish, has gone back to the homeland, hasn't he?
Do we get to keep him? Is that it? Now that he's fixed up, do we lose him? That's the problem, isn't it?
It is a big issue.
Yeah, he's with Shamrock Rovers now. Been without a club since I can't remember if it was either March or April, but his contract got paid up. He along with Janoy Donatian has had one of the most fascinating, bizarre Ipswich Town careers of any player that I've ever really come across. Like Barry Cotter's Ipswich Town arc was ridiculous, really. He arrived as kind of a Neymar lookalike, a questionable Neymar lookalike, but enough to make it into one of our website headlines. Was incredible on his debut. Was the trigger that ultimately ended up on a night that ended up with Mick McCarthy leaving, and then we just never see him again. Like, he's got clear ability. I think there's question marks over his application of that ability, but he's another one that just needs to play football. The team he's gone to, Shamrock Rovers, they're top of the League of Ireland Premier Division. Should be a good environment for him. I wouldn't surprise me if he one day comes back across the sea and has another crack at England. But he needs to work a few things out before he does that. The ability's there, but maybe the application isn't quite.
He had a flair for dramatic, as I seem to remember. Did he not score a winning penalty on his birthday against?
Yep.
Was that Peterborough in the?
I believe it was called the Leasing.com trophy at that point.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, he did. He's. And then in other games, he played an FA Cup game against Coventry, I think, and he got hooked at the break. And he's bizarre career. He's someone I'll always keep an eye on because I really like him as a player. He's quick, he's strong, powerful, good in the air, decent on the ball, vocal, but something just doesn't click with him. And I think he maybe rubs people up the wrong way a little bit. He's not a quiet, shy Irishman. He's he's around, but I'd love to see him do well again. And it wouldn't shock me if in a couple of years' time he had another crack at England. Hopefully, he can prepare himself better for it this time.
You'll always have a spot, Barry, as the voice of the strike. Welcome anytime if you want to come back, and maybe we'll use you going forward. I don't know what the contract arrangement is and how much we're paying you, but it's probably not enough. Andy, before we move on to other things, I guess we should finish with a little recap at the weekend from the weekend's game, which obviously seems a bloody long time ago now. How will you reflect on this window now? It's all done and dusted. As we say, an extraordinary, unbelievable, insane few weeks in the history of Ipswich Town. How will you in years to come look back at it, do you think?
It depends on how the team does. Hopefully it's looking back on like a summer where a team was built from scratch. Mark Ashton uses an expression, building the plane while it's already in the air, while it's already in flight, and that's what they've done. They've built an entirely new squad, and the hope's got to be that this isn't just the bones of a team that get Ipswich up into the Championship. It's got to be kind of the bones of a team that's going to keep Ipswich in the Championship and transition from being a League One club into a promotion fighting Championship club. Yeah, there'll be if that goal is achieved and they get there, sure, there's going to be a lot of change along the way. This team won't, I imagine, be fighting for a place in the Premier League. There'll be changes, there'll be newcomers, but I'll just reflect on it as just a fascinating 2-3 months of watching the most ridiculous major squad surgery I think anybody will ever see.
And as the big porker himself, Mike Bacon, has said several times on this show, fans deserve it. Fans deserve it. I mean, it's been years of boredom, and transfer deadline day in the past was just a non-event, wasn't it, at Ipswich Town? We tried our best to hype it up, but realistically, it was always like, well, yeah, we're just going to end up looking at what other teams are doing, and they've signed Kiefer Moore or something like that. For it was never really a big day, was it? But this transfer window deadline day, it has been everything and more that we hope for. So fingers crossed, this is indeed the catalyst, and it's part of the turnaround at Ipswich Town. Certainly, it feels like it could be. Before we move on to talk about the weekend's game, just a reminder, of course, a note for our sponsors. Use the code KOA at manscaped.com to get 20% off and free delivery. All that excellent cover they've got there from various sorts of shavers, be they intimate or nasal.
Still pretty intimate, mate. It's still an intimate shave.
I suppose sticking something up your nose is a pretty intimate act. There you go. There's your weed whacker right there for people watching on video. So use code KOA for 20% off and free delivery there. And also, please support our new sponsor, the New Wolsey Theatre, with their new show, Never Lost at Home, which we spoke about. Unbelievably, Hutchie, because I'm in the other office. I haven't brought my promo read down with me. Blame the fact that it's nighttime. But as I recall, it's a show about that unbelievable 1980-81 season where Town lifted the UEFA Cup off the back of the success of the 1978 show. And we're going to bring you actually a special show next week, speaking to the director, the writer, and also the star of that show, the guy who plays Bobby Robson. And I think that's going to be a really interesting show for us to do. The tickets are available now on the New Wolsey website. So get involved with that. It's going to be a really, really good show. Hutchie, speaking of good shows, generally speaking, Ipswich Town games have been good shows this season so far. And that was the case again at the weekend. We must have to reflect on that. I know it seems like a lifetime ago already. But you start to get to the point, don't you, when these things happen, where you wonder, are we cursed? Is there something deeper going on here? I remember back in the day, Derby County, when they opened Pride Park, ended up having the ground exercised because they didn't win at home for weeks, months, whatever it was afterwards. And there's some suggestion that there may have been some kind of medieval soldier's grave disturbed when there was upgrades going on at Portman Road back in the early noughties. And since then, the club have been cursed. And sometimes you think, is there any credence in that? Because all this change, and it's still, they seem to be never getting the rub of the green. It seems to be cursed. I don't know if we need to get someone in to wee in the four corner flag areas. I don't know how it works.
Ross would do that.
Yeah, but he wouldn't do it as an exorcism. He'd just do it for a laugh, wouldn't he, the boy?
Maybe that's what it needs. Just a cheerful, the friendly face of exorcisms.
Yeah. So, I mean, the game, obviously, the weekend, Town were 2-0 up. We thought, here we go. Job's a good one. And then, no.
Yeah, it's almost like the same old problems are kind of causing Ipswich issues, but the setting is just so different. Like last year, it was miserable 0-0 draws and things like that. Now it's just they're only capable of drawing 2-2 at home. The biggest outrage here is that it cost the £1 million picks another victory, which looked like it was in the bag. Luckily for me, though, I bet with a company who pay out once teams are 2-0 up in matches.
You're not claiming that as a win.
I'm not claiming it for the bank of £1 million picks. But what I am claiming is that the bank of Andy Warren
benefited.
So this was such a terrible idea because I've genuinely started gambling now. I don't think I don't think I've bet on football for about 2 years, and now a spur of the moment little feature in the name of podcasting has made me gamble. But I'm actually quite well up. So
the shares have done rather well.
Yeah. So in terms, if we're talking about curses, I'm doing okay. So don't you worry about me. Ipswich Town, however, not doing okay. They didn't learn their lesson at all in terms of looking after the big Wimbledon defender Ben Hennigan, who had 3 or 4 little trips into the into the Ipswich box, got his head on most of them, and they let him have the run of their box again at the back post for the equaliser in the 95th minute, which was eventually put in by Jack Redoni after Hladky spilled it. So yeah, some lessons not learnt there. But honestly, I think if they'd managed to stay 2-0 up for any longer than 3 or 4 minutes, if they Paul Cook said it after the game, if they'd scored 2 really good goals in there, had they been able to stay 2-0 up for 10, 15 minutes, the game would have been killed. They'd have got their first win, and yeah, things would have been a little different, and they wouldn't have had to sign the likes of Bersant Celina and Sam Morsy in the relegation zone, which you never know, might have added a few extra quid to certain transfer deals. Who knows? But yeah, hopefully this is almost a little mini era in itself. This kind of stumbling block spell of August 2021. It's mad that they got to the end of that without a win, but hopefully we look back at August 2021 as the time where everything changed, kind of, and deadline day can draw a line under that, and we can start afresh, as we've discussed in that Bolton game.
Winning in August for losers, mate. Really, I mean, they've done it. They've done it for the last couple of seasons and didn't really get anywhere. Nothing's won in August. They're in this for the long haul, and now they're going to rip off 30 in a row, mate. You watch.
30?
Wow, why not? Go big or go home.
Imagine that.
And this is a team that can certainly go big. So we will see. Yeah, I'm not sure it merits really more chat than that, to be honest. The Wimbledon game, it seems like a bit of a lifetime ago, doesn't it? And again, obviously things have changed since then, and we expect the squad to look very different next time they trot out at Fortress Portman Road against Bolton a week on Saturday. So yeah, there we go. Anything else to talk about, Hutchie, before we go to bed? Not together, although I'm not saying I wouldn't. Not saying I wouldn't be up for that.
You've been drinking. How many of those have you had? Just the lighting on this. This lighting shows up all the little puffy boulders in my face. I'm not normally very vain, but
you haven't got puffy boulders. What are you on about, mate?
I've got a potato face, like one of those with bulging little bits of face just coming out odd. One cheekbone's higher than the other. It's not put together. I think I was put together in the dark. But yeah, I'm going to sort out a new light for video viewers. That's about all I've got to say.
Lighting is key, friends. In TV and in life, lighting is key. That's a truism. Support our sponsors, friends. I've already mentioned them. Use the code KOA at manscaped.com for 20% off and free delivery. And also make sure you got your tickets for that excellent new show coming to the New Wolsey Theatre in a couple of weeks. Never Lost at Home. And look out for that show we're going to do next week. We've got that lined up. So that'll be another KOA special coming your way. Something a bit different, a bit theatrical. And as we know, as we found out last week, actually, we've got long and distinguished careers behind us treading the boards. So we are definitely the men to do that. I wonder if you can get some acting tips or maybe hand some out. Having led, I'm sure the guy who plays Bobby Robson will be interested to hear about your leading role as a shark in the school play. Still hoping for pictures and moving images to emerge.
There's definitely no moving images, but I would be shocked if there isn't a photo around somewhere.
Fingers crossed, Mrs. Hutchie. If you are listening,
that's what she's called. So.
If someone can get a message to her, I'd love to see a picture of young Hutch as shark number 1 in said play. Right, that's it then. It's gone midnight now. Ipswich Town have signed 19 new players. The transfer window is shut, at least for another summer. It's been a remarkable time in Ipswich Town history. It's been remarkably good fun to talk about it tonight and also have you along with us. I know a lot of you are going to be listening to this in the wee small hours. This is why we wanted to record it straight away, so it's there for you to listen to. As I say, ready for you on a Wednesday morning. Apologies for not bringing you on Monday, but things were kicking off and we thought it would be better to wait. Follow us across all our social medias, Kings of Anglia on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube and Facebook. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. We've had a couple more of them, which is great because it helps us greatly in the visibility in the charts. And Andy, how can we get to this point of the show without mentioning something quite exciting? We have been nominated, shortlisted, friends, for the best EFL podcast in the Football Choice Awards. And this is good because it's been voted for by you, the listeners. I remember the Smash Hit Awards back in the day. It was always the fan choice. That was the big one. So it's tremendous. It's really, really good, isn't it? It's so nice that listeners have voted for us, and we're on to the shorter list. And now, friends, we've got to go on and win it. We've got to go on and win it. And I'm not going to sit here and use false modesty or be kind of saying humble, just saying it's nice to be nominated, whatnot. No, we want to go on and win it. Because it would be great for the KOA Army, and I feel like as a movement, as a community, it would be great for us to win. And also, bluntly, because we bloody well deserve it, mate.
That award would look so good on that. If you move your head, look at the little bookshelf in there. That needs an award in there.
Yeah,
perfect. We've been talking about this podcast being soon to be award winning for 4 years. So I think the time has come. Please.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to beg.
Well, still another week left.
Just help us out. Come on.
Yeah, friends. If you've been good enough already to vote for us onto the shortlist, and if you would do your bit to vote for us to win, we've shared links all over our social media, the Football Choice Awards. You can vote on Instagram, Twitter, and also via their voting page. Hey, why not vote all 3 times? 3 times a charm, and we get 3 extra votes from each of you. That'd be tremendous. I know from our listening figures that if everyone votes who listens to this show, we'll storm it like Town are going to storm the league. So if you could help us there, that would be tremendous, friends. And we do appreciate each and every one of you. It was great. I must say, Hutchie, it's great to see that the KOA Fan Social boys getting out and about as well after games.
Now that's a movement.
That is a movement. Absolutely.
They are a movement led by their fearless leader, Ross, storming Ipswich Town Centre on a Saturday night after a 2-2 draw with Wimbledon.
Yes, indeed. I'm minded to suggest at some point we have some kind of big KOA night out. Now we can do those things again. I think it'd be good to get all the KOA people involved, the KOA Army, the listeners, people who appear on the pod would be tremendous. Maybe coming up to Christmas, who knows? We'll have another live podcast, maybe, Hutchie. We can do those things again.
Well, last time we did one of those, they lost. They ruined it, didn't they?
Yeah.
Hopefully this team's different.
Indeed. Right then, I've waffled on for long enough. It's now 10 past midnight. It is literally the morning after the night before. Ipswich Town have made 19 new signings in this transfer window, friends. It's not a drill. It has actually happened. And today/yesterday, they signed Celina and Sam Morsy. Is this the signings that are going to catapult Town into the upper echelons of League One and then into the Championship and then into the Premier League? Will we look back on this historic night, this late night show, and say that, my friends, is when it started? Let's hope so. Have a great rest of the week. We'll speak to you again soon. Night.
Night.